Hey, what's going on, guys? June here with Hapa英会話, and joining me today is Sarah. Hey, Sarah. Welcome back. How you
Hey,
doing?
hi everyone.
Very straightforward question. Sarah は日本人男性のことをどう思う? What do you think about like Japanese men?
I really have enjoyed the people that I've dated and had experiences with. I think that they tend to be really nice and gentlemanly, which is maybe why foreign women tend to, when they come here, want to have that experience. And I also feel like it's been a very interesting experiment in language. When you're dating someone who is not from your background and doesn't have the same, mother tongue as you do, you sort of both have to understand that communication will not always go the way that you're expecting it to. So I think my experiences dating Japanese people has made me more aware of, in any relationship, you have to have like this level of patience where it's like you're used to, maybe if you're dating someone who also speaks your mother tongue, you might say something like, let's say you're having an argument and you say, it's fine. But anyone who's like an English speaker in like a relationship knows that if a woman says it's fine, it's not really fine. They actually don't want you to just drop it. But I would say something like that, to a Japanese partner and be like, oh, it's fine. It's just drop it. It's fine. And of course, I'm wanting them to be like, no, let's work this out. But they'd be like, okay, it's fine. Like they hear that and they're like, all right, sounds good. Like, let's move on. And I'd be like, wait, no, like you didn't get my very subtle, very advanced context clues from my mother language. And so I had to be more direct with, communication. And also, I would have to sort of take a second when I was reading, especially text messages, and be like, I'm reading my native voice into this text they've sent, but I don't think they mean it in the way that I'm taking it. Let me just clarify. So dating people outside of your comfort zone teaches you how to be, more patient in relationships. So for that reason, I really appreciated all the experiences with Japanese people I've had.
But the one thing that you mentioned that I thought was really interesting was I think as a Japanese person, you're taught, or maybe you see like, in mass media or movies that アメリカ人は物事をものすごくはっきり言う. But, that's not always the case. I mean, sometimes you're very direct about the things you say, but when you're in a relationship, 多分日本と同じように you say certain things hoping that the other person understands what the real meaning is behind what you're saying, right? It's not always direct. So that's why the fact that you had to change your ways of communicating with your partner, and for you to kind of realize you had to be direct in this kind of sense for them to understand, is actually quite ironic, I guess, in a sense. ね、なんかアメリカ人は物事をいつもはっきり言うね。アメリカ人は日本人のなんかこう微妙なこうニュアンスの違いとか言わなくても分かることをね、アメリカ人は分かってくれないとかってよく言われるけど、でも逆もよくあるんだよね。And this is like the big communication barrier that happens when you have two people from two different countries speaking two different languages.
Yeah. And I think the opposite is also true, where we sort of think of Japanese people as being a little more subtle, a little less, forward. But in some respects, there are times where I felt like no one would ever say that to me in like a sort of native English speaker relationship, because we sort of know like that's not a great thing to say. Like, for example, in Japan, typically when you've gotten like a bit chubby or you've lost a bit of weight, like both things, you just say them as like normal, like, oh, you've gotten a bit fat, and like, oh, ちょっと太ったね. And it's like, that's like super normal to say, sort of like, oh, you got a bit taller. It's not something, you're not like saying it in like a, like, oh, you've put on some pounds,
You'll never
if you say it in English, like you would never say that to your girlfriend unless you want to sleep on the couch for like 3 months, So I've had boyfriends, even my husband's like, I'm pregnant right now. And so he's like, oh, like you're getting like rounder. And I'm like, why would you say that to me? Like, but of course, I know for him, he's just saying it is a like matter of fact, I have indeed gotten rounder. But in English, like even if you're pregnant, even if you have put on weight, you just would not say that, especially like a woman. That's something that maybe we know, but I don't think some of the people I've dated, they just don't know that rule. So they're like, oh, like gotten a bit fat, and I'm like, what? Like I'm like, no, boyfriends don't say that to people.
でもやっぱそこなんだよね。だから特にそのね、when you're like in a relationship, there's certain things that you would say like in the United States. And that's what makes, the international couple / marriage a challenge, but also, a reward at the same time is that, because, I watched my parents, growing up, I would say about 95% of their fights were like not fights. They were just, trying to learn about each other's culture, right? もう文化の違いの喧嘩. And when you have like certain expectations of how things are supposed to be, and they are not the way that you expect them to be, that's when, it either turns into a fight, or you get stressed out, or, you go into like a state of confusion because, you growing up, こういう状況ではこういう対応するはず。だけどこの人はこういう対応しなかった。なんでなんだ? And then that's, where, the international like relationships can get really interesting. But,
that actually came up for us, my husband and I, when the COVID-19 stuff started coming up and we were, in quarantine, because I actually had, people who were coming here from America and they had no place to stay. And, as an American, I'm like, my house is your house, mi casa es su casa, like, come stay with us. We have the space. And, you have no place to go because it was locked down. So they couldn't get into their new apartment just because everything was locked down. And so they're here for about a month. And, my husband is just like, this would never happen. All of my friends just think this is so crazy. I think this is crazy. Like, how can they be here for so long? And, they're in our space. And like, unless it's, my mom and my dad, like, I wouldn't have people stay here, for that long. And, for me, I'm like, oh, you can stay as long as you want, So there's a bit of like, okay, we're both coming from very different, places, very different points of view. I think this is totally fine. You think this is absolutely not fine. How do we move forward with it?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely a lot of cultural differences that it takes time. I think even after you've known somebody for a really long time, there's always something new that comes up. And even when you are in a relationship with somebody from, the same country, you're constantly learning something new about another person. But when that's a different country, right? It makes that challenge even that much bigger. All right. And for everybody watching this video, I just want to let you know that Sarah is a tutor on Cafe Talk. If you are interested, all of her information is in the descriptions below, or you can go to cafetalk.com and find her there. All right, Sarah. Well, thank you very much. I'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
All right.